So unsurprisingly, ODST sold well. Really well. Within 2 weeks, it had already sold 2.5 million copies. And despite a vocal group of fans and critics who weren't so impressed with Bungie's output, the game had a positive critical reception. While those numbers are nowhere near the last mainline title, Halo 3, it was yet another miracle considering the conditions that ODST was made under, since the entire reason that game only had 1 year of development time was because of Bungie's next game, their final installment in their flagship franchise, Halo Reach, which released September 14th, 2010. Reach was announced at E3 2009, the same time that Recon was now renamed as ODST. So while one team at Bungie was crunching to get that out of the door, another team was already working on what I think is their biggest game yet. Yes, 3 was a huge deal, and it's undeniably the biggest Halo game ever, in sales as well as just cultural significance, but this was something else. Reach may have been announced in 2009, but it's a game that was a long time coming. Even if you're like me and have never read The Fall of Reach, ever since Combat Evolved, the events of what happened on Reach have been evoked throughout the franchise like a cloud looming over the UNSC. And that darker tone can immediately be felt in the reveal trailer, with the visuals of a planet on fire, as all you could hear are the sounds of the UNSC going completely frantic, unsure of what to do. Reach is often touted by most fans as the best game in the franchise, and yet it's the one game I've held off on playing until I reached this point in the franchise, pun intended. Yes, I've played every other mainline entry except for Reach, and after playing it twice, once on 360 and another on PC, while I hesitate to call it the best Halo game, or even one of my favorites for reasons I'll expand on later, it's much better than I thought it was at first glance. During the opening hours, I mostly wrote it off as Call of Duty but Halo times 12, mainly because of some gameplay changes I'll get into, the cinematography, the lighting, even the cover art was really sort of off-putting. The art design this time around is a complete mixed bag for me. On one hand, it's impressive that this game is 15 years old and still holds up relatively well. Just the skyboxes alone amazed me running on an Xbox One X. It's insane to think that Reach was a later 360 game since it was released 5 years after the console's launch. And under no circumstances can I believe that this and Halo 3 were ever released on the same console. While on the other hand, and this may get controversial once I get to the 343 games, but I think the quote-unquote decline of Halo's art style from simplified and identifiable to a sort of muddy mess didn't start with 4 or even Anniversary. It actually began with Reach. The character models from Anniversary that just look wrong, like Captain Keyes, the UNSC soldiers, and the Chief, those all came from Reach. Granted, I did praise Bungie previously for being willing to adapt and change designs in order to fit the tone each individual installment calls for, and I still agree with that. But man, the Spartan armor and Covenant designs feel way too busy, the guns feel way too occupied with looking real and gritty. The brighter colors of previous games are muted and washed out with tones of yellows and browns, even more so than Halo 3. Even the first reveal of the Covenant in the very first mission felt so sour, since all of the models and backgrounds fused into this mismatch of dull colors. It just didn't feel like Halo. If anything, it felt like any other first-person shooter on the console. However, once you allow yourself to take in the entire game, it's much easier to see what Bungie was going for. Because to me, Reach was meant to resemble a war movie. From the color grading to the handheld camera and the cinematics, which honestly make for some of the best cutscenes in the entire franchise. None of these changes are haphazard. When producer Peter Jackson and director Neil Blomkamp's Halo movie failed, Blomkamp decided to direct a trailer for Halo 3, using many of the props made for that fail filmed by Weta Studios, and was shot and edited in his distinct shaky cam style, with lots of frantic editing to different sorts of cameras that would become so identifiable in District 9, and is also prevalent in Reach. Both ODST and Reach had their own live-action trailers as well, and although they were made by different directors, still managed to maintain that gritty look and handheld cinematography. So Reach, the game, feels more like Bungie taking what could have been and translating that into a video game. So while I'm not too keen on the aesthetics of it, I can understand why Bungie decided to alter the way the story looks to fit this more dire story. It's like Saving Private Ryan, but for gamers. Reach is a prequel set right before combat evolved, and is centered on Noble Team, a squad of Spartans, including a new recruit and playable character, Noble 6. What is initially an investigation of strange happenings on the civilian planet of Reach quickly escalates into a full Covenant invasion. In a lot of ways, ODST paved the way for Reach. I was surprised when I realized that this tackles very similar themes just by being the exact opposite. Where ODST is a game about a bunch of soldiers who are scattered all over a city and have to slowly come together to narrowly escape, Reach is about a tight-knit group of Spartans who decide to stay and defend Reach and are slowly taken out one by one. Both games play on what has become expected from this franchise by centering on what it's like to be anybody else but the Master Chief during the Human Covenant War. Except where ODST focused on the vulnerability and paid it off with a somewhat lighthearted ending, besides New Mombasa being fucking glassed, Reach is sort of what would happen if all of those wins were removed. All the power, no fantasy. From the very opening of the game, Noble Team are constantly losing. Except in previous Halo games, there is always improvisation. It's the whole point of the game. If something goes wrong, the Chief and Cortana will usually figure out some sort of alternative. Hell, even in ODST, a game built around a mission gone wrong is all about the team eventually pulling through in the end. While in Reach, there is still that sense of improvisation, it's all about a team constantly being pushed into a corner and almost overwhelmed. And the entire game has this sense of foreboding atmosphere to it, and that's all because the music in Reach is so ominous. Parts of the soundtrack feel like it's intentionally harkening back to Combat Evolved's sort of ethereal ambience, but the key here is that there's not a lot of triumphant music to really balance it out. ODST was able to stand apart from the original trilogy by having both its slower segments backed by solemn jazz, as well as the classic Halo stuff that we expect with the music to match. But in Reach, there's not a lot of action music. There's some. My favorite track is the one that plays when the Covenant pods land on the beach, but even in moments where you should be astonished, like when George and Six go to space and you get to pilot a ship for the first time in the franchise, you're not hearing the enchanting choir in the Halo theme, or even electric guitars and drums. Just these slow, ambient electronic tracks that makes the entire mission feel uncomfortable, like the game knows something that you don't. Which all culminates when the Savannah frigate is destroyed, leading George to sacrifice himself in order to complete the mission of destroying the Covenant corvette over Reach, making him the first death in the game. And you're just forced to watch as his sacrifice is immediately shown to have been in vain when an entire Covenant fleet arrives over Reach, as Noble 6 just falls towards the surface of Reach. It's an effective moment, as this is not really something that these games usually do. I criticized Halo 3 for its handling of legacy characters' deaths, since save for truth, they all felt a little bit forced, as if the game was winking at us that, yup, this is the final game, so we gotta raise the stakes somehow. Video games can, if done well, use death a lot more effectively than any other form of storytelling. I even think that they can elicit feelings beyond the scale of even a movie. Ironically, Reach handles the concept of death in a much more meaningful manner, with characters that were essentially made to be cannon fodder. I appreciate how spread out the deaths are to prevent them from losing their effectiveness, and how the team are given absolutely no time to mourn their lost comrades. The first time I saw Kat get shot by a random alien off screen, you could hear a pin drop in my room. And it's not lost on me that the very first task that you're given after Kat's death is to destroy the anti-air cannons, the very same mission that you did with her at the beginning of the game. It's a subtle way to make her absence from Noble Team all the more prevalent by not just relying on cutscenes, but using the very nature of being an interactive experience to its advantage. Something I'm not sure the rest of the game attempts to reach to its fullest potential. Again, pun intended. As a game, Reach is just more Halo, except with some notable additions. Spike grenades from Halo 3 were removed, there's a new assassination system for stealth takedowns, and the animations on those are always fun. Slight armor customization that's not too extensive, and some new weapons and a new elite variant. But that's not really what everyone remembers from this game. No, the biggest thing that Reach added was armor power-ups, namely the addition of Sprint. I've made it clear in previous videos, but I don't play Halo's multiplayer at all. So the whole advanced mobility conversation from this game forward is one I set out of entirely. However, in Reach's campaign, I can say that I wasn't very fond of this addition at all. Since it is a power-up, it has to reload instead of just always being available, which is annoying, and the more egregious problem, to make up for Sprint being a worthwhile power-up for both single-player and multiplayer, your overall walking speed has been lowered in Reach, pretty much rendering my age-old handheld turret method completely useless on any difficulty but easy, since you just end up as a sitting duck. And honestly, while the other power-ups are sort of useful, like the jetpack is just so much fun to fly around all over the place, there is no reason to keep them for very long, since you'll just be waddling the entire time, a stark difference from previous titles. The vehicle missions like the aforementioned space battle and the sequence where you fly a Hornet all over the crumbling city of New Alexandria were fun, and they offered a sense of scale that hadn't been seen in the franchise so far. Although I am disappointed that the best mission in the game, one of the best levels in Halo history, Exodus, wasn't doubled down on. Going into Reach, the only two images that I knew of were Noble Six's helmet in the dirt and this cutscene of Noble Six infiltrating New Alexandria and hopping over the railing. It was the coolest shit ever. And the mission delivers on it, focusing on them going through the city with the streets full of dead civilians. You're given a half-full health bar and a pistol, only to complete hallways full of grunts ready to kill you with grenades. Exploring a massive city that's still standing and full of life while being actively invaded by Covenant forces is exactly the sort of game I expected Reach to be, and yet that's only a small fraction of what the mission ends up being. The rest is fine, just not what I really wanted. I don't even like Reach's opening. Winter Contingency is just not a good introduction level. Usually with a Halo game, there's some sort of hook to keep you invested before you're tossed into the deep end of the pool. In CE, our ship is invaded, we escape and find refuge on this ancient alien structure, while also having to reunite with our captain. In Halo 2, the aliens we're fighting have a much more zealot-like goal than we were originally aware of. Also, they're knocking on Earth's door like a Jehovah's Witness. Halo 3, Cortana's gone, we gotta save her. Plus, they're invading Earth again! You get the point. Instead, Reach just sort of goes, yup, there's something fishy going on, and gives you a 15-minute level where you mostly just walk around for half of it, investigating different parts of a village before it's revealed that the Covenant are on Reach. And then the rest of the game is just driving around in a Jeep, which is fun, but it's just, you're just shooting shit, and it's not engaging. I get that the actual hook for Reach was shown before Winter Contingency, with this foreboding image that none of this will go the way that we expect it to, and the mission itself is going for this slower investigation that builds up to the Covenant's reveal. Plus, I do like the final section in the factory pretty well, even if it only lasts for a couple minutes tops. But all in all, it just doesn't feel like a great introduction on a first playthrough, and feels even slower when revisited, which goes for some of Reach's other missions. Mainly those vehicle missions I mentioned. They go on for just a little bit too long in my opinion. That's not to say that all the levels in Reach are bad. Dr. Halsey's underground facility is beautiful. The different building interiors in New Alexandria all make it feel like a real city. The set pieces in the final mission, like escaping the scarabs on a mongoose, was so great, and the reuse of the Oni mission was fine. Revisiting a previous map under different conditions is a classic Halo staple at this point. But that's the thing. It just feels like more of what we expect, which is just a little disappointing for a game that's supposed to be doing something different from what we expect. I might be wrong about this, but you can almost sense that the team at Bungie are begging to make something new. That's not to question the amount of work and care that went into Reach. By God, I feel like every single video I've made it very clear that Bungie is an extremely hardworking studio, and the power-ups and gameplay alterations in Reach can be characterized as additions meant to excite longtime fans. Plus, there's also nods and fan things that they added, like the Chief cameo at the end, or Cortana's color being that combat evolved purple rather than the Halo 3 blue, or the expendable soldiers that help you throughout the game being named after Bungie employees, which is such a great nod. But as a game, story aside, Reach isn't really all that astonishing or even identifiable against the rest. I do think that it avoids some of the monotony that could be a problem in, say, like Combat Evolved, but as a whole package, I don't think that it comes close to any of those games. And not to whittle this down to just one thing, it's safe to say that most people remember this game for its ending. Despite my somewhat harsh words I just had for Reach, while the first half of the game is good, the final couple hours of it are just amazing. I do think that they're somewhat greater than the sum of their parts because at its core, it's just two, technically three, Horde mode missions back to back. Plus, June just fucking disappears. I don't even understand why he's a character, if I'm being honest. He's not that fun. I'm sorry. I don't like his character. What the fuck is he here for? But once Halsey gives Noble 6 the task of delivering Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn, it's pretty obvious that no one's making it out alive. It's been a pretty big point that these two spin-off games are not to use the main Halo themes. So when we hear Cortana's theme for the first time in 3 years, while it's initially exciting to us fans, it immediately gives off that same foreboding atmosphere that the rest of the game has, almost setting up Noble Team sacrifices as some sort of divine, predetermined moment. But that doesn't take away the gut punch I felt when Carter and Emil give their best and ultimately sacrifice themselves. Also, Noble 6 can make sure that Cortana gets to Captain Keyes safely. It is fan service, but damn it if it's not executed so well. Building up this team only to give them a suicide mission that is the direct reason that the rest of the games even happened is the sort of payoff that most writers can only dream of achieving. Man, Keyes offering for 6 to escape with them, only for his final line to be, I have the gun, is so damn good. That foreboding tone and the dread that this game builds up in your soul all leads to this line and 6's final stand against the Covenant, which, no matter how long you put up a fight, no matter what the internet says, it always ends with 6 being overpowered by elites before Reach gets glassed, ending the game in the exact way that it began. The finale of Halo Reach is anticlimactic in a good way. If there's a sort of through line between this and ODST, it's that not everyone can be the Master Chief. Noble Team's contribution to the story is over. And while the game could have very well ended on that sour note, I will always appreciate Halsey's final monologue and seeing a revived Reach at what is currently the farthest point in the Halo timeline, signifying that long after whatever sequels get made, Noble Team's final stand on Reach will always be remembered. And damn it, if that's not a good prequel, I don't know what is, man. Reach's ending was so against the grain of what people have come to expect from Halo and from video games that there's still fans searching up If You Can Somehow Survive and creating bullshit hoaxes and fan theories about it 15 years after the fact. And you know what? All the more power to those people. Even with my criticisms for it, I have to say that Bungie went out with a massive bang. A game that found a way to thematically and literally tie back to the very beginning of the franchise. Reach just completely leans into its nature as a non-numbered entry and finally lets the fans experience what is essentially the Alamo of the Halo universe. What the fuck is that line? Watching Reach's credits made me choke up. Not because all these characters we got attached to are dead, but because of the thank you note from Bungie at the very end as the Pillar of Autumn heads closer and closer to the ring from Combat Evolved. Not only does it work as an effective bridge from this game to CE, but it's a nice metaphor for the franchise. Halo is going to continue on, but Bungie is going to be heading in their own direction, whatever that may be. And it's really upsetting that this beautiful note is just completely missing from the Master Chief Collection. Same with the note from Halo 3, and that makes me wonder if that's why the menus and credits are missing from that remaster, because Microsoft doesn't want to recognize and commemorate the developers who spent a decade building this universe. It sort of depresses me that when people talk about early Halo, they only really focus on the original trilogy, and ODST and Reach are just sort of tossed to the side, when in all actuality, they make Bungie's entire run with the franchise feel complete. Playing all these games back to back feels a bit like a dialogue, one that valued creative growth as well as appreciated the community that they'd fostered over 9 years of hard work. A community unlike any other franchise I'd ever seen. Except maybe Sonic, Reach was the first game I was cognizant of. It's not just having a vague memory of a commercial. I remember walking into Walmart and seeing those damn ads, not knowing what the hell this was. Where's John Halo? I wasn't there in 2010 to say goodbye, but that doesn't mean that this moment didn't hit me all the same. Making these videos, going through each game's development, listening to interviews, watching press and news coverage, unearthing random vlogs of fans at midnight premieres, that's been my favorite part of creating these Halo games. I mean, playing the games is cool too, I guess, but even knowing that I completely suck ass at multiplayer, or without ever posting on a forum or making a machinima, I felt like I've become a part of a community. And it's just a shame that this is sort of an end of an era. And that's not preemptive shade towards the 343 titles, because I want to give those games their time in the sun. But there was a feeling of connection and unity that was sort of dying in all gaming spaces in lieu of convenience at the same time Bungie left Halo behind. And slowly but surely, it changed everything from the way that games were marketed to the way that they were even made. So where does that leave the franchise? Well, that's for us to find out together.
I gotcha. Oh, sí, Señor Fire. Está en fuego. Step into my office cause you're fired. You know what lights my fire? Fire.
Like fire? Pre-order the Halo Reach Noble map pack at any GameStop location to get the Mark V flaming helmet for your Xbox 360 avatar. GameStop, power to the players, rated M for mature.